Before the college, 400 years before the classroom.
Welcome to our series exploring the complete history of St. Mary's College of Maryland. Over the next 15 episodes, we'll travel through nearly 4 centuries of Maryland history to discover how a small school became one of America's most unique public honors colleges.
Most people think the story begins with a school building.
But it really starts more than 200 years earlier, long before classrooms, professors, or even the United States existed.
Exactly.
To understand St. Mary's College of Maryland, we first have to understand the land it stands on. That land has witnessed Native American communities, English colonists, religious refugees, political struggles, revolutions, civil wars, and educational reform. Every one of those events helped shape the institution we know today.
So today we're not talking about the college itself. We're talking about everything that had to happen before the college could even exist.
Let's begin in the early 1600s.
Long before Europeans arrived permanently, the region around today's St. Mary's River was home to native peoples, including the Yaocomico. They lived along the rivers in Chesapeake Bay, farming corn, beans, and squash while fishing and hunting throughout the region.
The waterways were highways. Instead of paved roads, canoes connected villages and trading partners. The Chesapeake Bay supported abundant seafood, making it one of the richest natural environments in North America.
Then came England's effort to establish a new colony.
In the early 17th century, England was experiencing intense religious conflict. Catholics often faced discrimination, fines, and legal restrictions.
One English noble family, the Calverts, hoped to establish a colony where Catholics and Protestants could live together more peacefully.
That idea eventually became the colony of Maryland. The second Lord Baltimore, Cecil Calvert, received a royal charter from King Charles I in 1632. Although Cecil Calvert never visited Maryland himself, he directed the planning of the colony from England.
In November of 1633, 2 ships sailed from England. They were called the Ark and the Dove. On board were around 140 settlers. Some were Catholic, some were Protestant. They represented a mixture of backgrounds, professions, and beliefs.
After several months at sea, the expedition reached the Chesapeake Bay. In March of 1634, they arrived at a place along the St. Mary's River where they established Maryland's first permanent European settlement. They named it St. Mary's City.
That settlement became Maryland's first capital.
Today, the modern college campus sits beside the archaeological remains of that original colonial city.
It's one of the few colleges in America located next to an active archaeological site of such national importance.
Imagine attending class where historians are still uncovering artifacts from the 17th century. Students today can literally walk through history.
The first settlers negotiated with the Yaocomico people for the land.
While historical accounts describe agreements between the groups, modern historians also recognize that European settlement brought enormous disruption to indigenous communities through disease, displacement, and changing political relationships.
History is rarely simple. Understanding the whole story means recognizing both the hopes of the colonists and the profound impact their arrival had on the people already living there.
As St. Mary's City grew, it became Maryland's political center. The first legislative assembly met there. Government officials worked there. Courts operated there. Religious services were held there. For several decades, this small settlement became one of the most important places in colonial Maryland.
One landmark event came in 1649. The Maryland Toleration Act extended legal protections for several Christian denominations. Although it did not provide complete religious freedom by modern standards, it represented an important step toward greater religious tolerance during a period when Europe was experiencing significant religious conflict.
Education also became increasingly important. Early colonists believed literacy was valuable for reading religious texts. conducting business, and participating in government. However, schools were small, scattered, and often operated informally.
There certainly wasn't anything resembling a college. Most advanced education required traveling back to England, or later attending one of the few colleges established in the colonies.
Over time, Maryland changed. Its population expanded. Agriculture flourished, especially tobacco. Large plantations developed throughout the region. Unfortunately, that economic growth depended heavily on enslaved labor.
That's another important part of the story. Enslaved Africans and their descendants contributed enormously to building colonial Maryland. Their labor shaped the economy that supported communities across the colony, even while they were denied their freedom and basic human rights.
By the late 1600s, Maryland's political center began shifting. In 1695, the colonial capital moved from St. Mary's City to Annapolis.
That decision dramatically changed the future of St. Mary's City.
Without the government located there, the community gradually declined. Businesses moved, officials left, construction slowed. The once busy colonial capital slowly became a quiet rural area.
Ironically, that decline helped preserve history. Because large cities never replaced the original settlement, much of the archaeological record remained underground.
Centuries later, researchers would uncover foundations, pottery, tools, and countless artifacts that tell the story of colonial Maryland.
Fast forward to the early 19th century.
The United States had become an independent nation. Public education was expanding. Many states began investing more seriously in schools.
Maryland was no exception.
State leaders recognized the growing need for better educational opportunities, especially for women. During the early 1800s, educational options for girls were far more limited than those available to boys.
Female seminaries began appearing across the country.
Despite the name, these institutions were not necessarily religious seminaries. The word seminary often referred to advanced schools that provided young women with a rigorous education.
Subjects included literature, mathematics, science, history, music, art, languages, and teacher preparation.
Many graduates went on to become educators themselves.
By the late 1830s, Maryland legislators decided to establish one of these schools in historic St. Mary's County.
The location was symbolic. Although St. Mary's City had lost its role as the colonial capital, it remained an important historical site with deep connections to Maryland's origins.
In 1839, the Maryland General Assembly authorized the creation of what would become St. Mary's Female Seminary.
The school officially opened its doors in 1840. Just a few years later, in 1845, it was formally incorporated.
That moment marks the true beginning of the institution that eventually evolved into today's St. Mary's College of Maryland.
It's remarkable when you think about it.
The college's roots stretch back not just to 1840, but to 1634. Its campus exists because Maryland itself began here.
Few colleges can claim that kind of historical connection.
Students aren't simply attending classes on an old campus. They're studying beside the birthplace of an entire state.
In our next episode, we'll explore those early years of St. Mary's Female Seminary.
Who founded it? Who were the first students? What did they study? What did daily life look like in the 1840s?
We'll also discover how one small school, established for the education of young women, survived challenges that might have ended many other institutions before they ever had a chance to grow.
Thank you for joining us for Episode 1.
If you enjoyed this journey into Maryland's earliest history, be sure to join us for Episode 2 as the doors of St. Mary's Female Seminary finally open for the very first class.
Until next time, thanks for listening, and remember that every great institution begins with a story. and this one began more than 400 years ago on the shores of the St. Mary's River.